Director Lewis?
Here.
Director Troiani?
Here.
Director McAllis?
Here.
We have a quorum of 5 present with 2 absent. If the record would also show that Directors Durante, Frega, Fuentes, Hobson, Melvin, Pang, Ross, Totten, and Dillard are all also present.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from January 21, 2016. Motion by Member DeWitt, second by Director Lewis. Roll call.
Director Colson?
Yes.
Director DeWitt?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Troiani?
Yes.
Director McAllis?
Aye.
5 ayes and 2 absent.
Next item on the agenda is a resolution certifying the financial results for the fourth quarter 2015 and a report on the January 16 financial results. B.
Chairman McAllis, members, today we'll be reviewing the year-end financial results for 2015, which are subject to board certification. We'll also take a quick look at the results for the first month of January 2016. A comprehensive written report of the fourth quarter results was included in your board materials. So the Service Board's unaudited financial results through the fourth quarter of 2015 were satisfactory. Although operating revenue was impacted by the continued uncertainty of state funding for reduced and free rides, strong expense performance, aided by low fuel prices, led to favorable operating deficits. At the end of the presentation, I will be recommending that the board certify the results of the operations of each of the service boards and the region taken as a whole, that they are in substantial accordance with the adopted 2015 budget. Please keep in mind that this certification is based on unaudited results, so if the Service Board's audited results come back with significant changes from what was presented today, the RTA staff will inform the board. So let's look at labor data, which indicates that the Chicago area labor force grew by about 20,000 during the fourth quarter, while employment increased by 10,000, resulting in a 0.2 percentage point increase in the regional unemployment rate to 5.8%. This level lagged the national average of 5%. Year-to-date system ridership finished the fourth quarter 1.6 lower than budget, as shown by the orange bars on this chart. December ridership decreased by 1.8% versus prior year after having an increase in November. Unfortunately, this was just enough to swing the full year into a small decline of 0.2% versus 2014. Lower gasoline prices and the Metro fare increase were the main reasons for the 2015 ridership results. As we saw in the performance measures presentation, our region's 0.2% ridership decline compared favorably to our peer regions, 7 of which experienced ridership losses of 2% or greater. Let's look at CTA. CTA ridership was 1.2% under budget, but 0.3% higher than prior budget. Bus ridership was down 0.7%, but that's stabilizing after the 8% loss we experienced in 2014. On a brighter note, CTA rail ridership increased by 1.5% from 2014 and set another record at 241 million rides for the year. Looking at Metro ridership, it was 1% unfavorable to budget and 2.1% lower than 2014, impacted by both the February fare increase and the lower gasoline prices. As indicated by the red box, Pace Suburban Service ridership finished 8% unfavorable to budget and 4.8% lower than 2014. Pace cited the lower gasoline prices, the discontinuation of cash transfers, and route consolidation as the reasons for their ridership decline. But despite their overall decline, Pace bus on shoulder routes continue to experience rapid ridership growth of around 40% in 2015. ADA Pace ridership was 3% unfavorable to budget, also highlighted in the red, with year-over-year growth of 2.4%, but falling short of Pace's 5% expectation. Let's look at operating revenue. So this was $16.2 million, or 1.4% unfavorable to budget, primarily due to the lower state-reduced fare reimbursement funding being reported by the service boards. Fare revenue, however, was essentially at budget for each service board. Pace Suburban Service operating revenue was 7.4% unfavorable, highlighted in red, again due to the shortfall in reduced fare reimbursement from the state, compounded by lower than budgeted advertising revenue. Let's look at public funding. This shows favorable to budget results for each service board. We are including here actual sales tax results through November, which reflected a 4.1% growth over 2014, so sales tax continues to exhibit strength. The RET results, the real estate transfer tax results for 2015, were also very strong at $11.1 million, or 17% favorable to budget, contributing to CTA's highlighted favorable variance of 4.9%. So let's look at operating expenses through December. They were $69.8 million, or 2.7% favorable to budget, with each service board reporting favorable results for both the month of December and the full year. Let's look at the fuel slide. So a quick look at the fuel slide reveals that the substantial fuel expense savings relative to budget were realized by each service board, led by PACE, totaling $25 million on the system. PACE Suburban Service had an 8.3 favorable to budget expense performance, highlighted in blue, driven primarily again by the fuel savings of $9 million. ADA Paratransit 9.5 favorable expense performance was driven by lower purchase transportation, fuel, administrative, and overhead expense. PACE's cost per passenger trip for ADA Paratransit decreased from $38.05 in 2014 to $36.77 in 2015, and this is due to the improved terms on their provider contracts. Let's look at the regional level here. Favorable operating expenses and public funding more than offset the unfavorable operating revenue, producing a full-year net result which was $102.2 million favorable to budget. Metro PACE Suburban Service and ADA Paratransit each had favorable net results in excess of 3%, highlighted in the blue, due to expense performance. Each of the recovery ratios shown on the expanded recovery ratio slide decreased slightly relative to last month's report. On the left, the fare recovery ratio of 38.1% includes passenger fare revenue, which includes passenger fare revenue only, or the pure recovery ratio, was 0.4 percentage points improved from 2014. When you look at ancillary service board revenue and add that, the recovery ratio increases to 43.9% through the fourth quarter, and that's labeled as all revenue in the table. In the right section, we show the statutory recovery ratio, which is with the allowed credits and compared to budget. This stood at 52.1% through the fourth quarter, 0.2 percentage points favorable to budget due to, again, the favorable expense performance. So focusing on the certification of the year-to-date financial results through the fourth quarter, this slide displays the variance of each service board's operating deficit from budget. The operating deficit is calculated by subtracting operating expenses from operating revenue and does not consider public funding results. Each service board had a favorable variance in operating deficit. The combined regional operating deficit was $53.6 million, or 3.7 favorable. I recommend that the results of the operations of the service boards and the region taken as a whole be found in substantial accordance with the adopted budget through the fourth quarter of 2015. Now we'll take a brief review of the January 2016 results. Okay, so the January results pick up where 2015 left off. Ridership is still unfavorable to budget by 1.6 and was down 1.7 from January 2015. But it does have this January had one fewer workday than last month. Lower accrual of the state reduced fare funding impacted operating revenue, but good expense performance, aided by low fuel prices, more than offset the revenue shortfall and produced a system net result, which was $4.4 million favorable to budget. And the regional recovery ratio was also favorable to budget by 0.6 percentage points. We'll get a better sense of how 2016 is trending when we look at the February year-to-date results next month. This concludes my remarks. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bea. Are there questions or comments? Director Melvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did I understand you say a 40% increase in the ridership for the bus on shoulder? That
is correct.
That's remarkable. That's the biggest number we've heard. Are they continuing to grow this? Is this continuing to be expanded? Or
they are continuing to explore expansion, and BRT as well, bus rapid transit on some routes. They see that that is the area that's really producing results, so they're continuing to explore.
That's very good news. And can you do me a favor and just back up to the fuel slide, please? That's huge. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Yes, Director Lewis.
B, I know we've covered this before, but how do we measure ridership? I know it's a big component in terms of some of our ratios, and I know particularly on some of the metro trains, it seems us a little harder to accurately measure that. So how do we measure that? Because that's a number that really drives a lot of our performance statistics.
Metro measures based on passes purchased and tickets. So it is not a pure per ride as opposed to CTA and PACE. So they will allow so many rides per monthly pass. And it does vary, so they're not counting it true rides.
On the CTA,
true passenger trips, I should say.
On CTA, is it turnstile measure?
Yes, they have all the data through the Ventra. You know, it's a direct passenger trip measure, so they can't count actual rides.
And the same thing with PACE?
Correct.
Okay.
All the turnstiles and the vehicles have automatic passenger counters in them. So basically, when you pass through the door, it counts you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
But that is not unusual for open systems like Metro. You know, many other peers do that way as well.
No, I was just worried that maybe, sometimes when I'm on the train, it looks like it's pretty full, but again, I'm sure that the methodology they have, even if it's not as accurate, it's probably consistent from period to period. So that was what I was wondering about.
And with the expansion of use of the Ventra system, so, I ride Metra now with an electronic ticket, and so they have the ability to actually know when I'm, they're going to have a lot more ability to actually get more data. Now, that's not going to happen tomorrow, but over time, we'll start to see more detailed data coming out in their operating space, too.
Chairman Dillard.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. Director Melvin, Bus on Shoulder, a tremendously innovative and successful program. Yesterday at this conference, Director Ross of PACE said there's aside from the fact that we are planning more Bus on Shoulders, he is out of parking spaces generally for people that want to do the Bus on Shoulder. We've expanded Burridge's and Bolingbrook's parking lots, but parking's an issue for him, and he told that to the engineers yesterday. And then he needs more buses. He's out, looking for money to purchase more buses. If you haven't ridden on a bus on shoulder, they're awesome. I mean, there is Wi-Fi service. It sort of reminds you, and the seats are staggered. It's like being on an airplane, and it's not your typical, larger bus. I mean, it's a big bus, but you feel like you're in a first-class airplane operation with Wi-Fi service. It's got GPS tracking. It is a very nice ride. And if you get on, and it's primarily today I-55, but if you're getting on in that southwest suburb, it's a great way to get downtown. And, a tremendous success story. And in terms of economics, it's a cheap way for us to provide very good, quick downtown service. It's not as expensive as rail, but it comes back to we need more buses, we need more capital. We've got to figure out where to park these people, but there's more Bus on Shoulder coming. And then last but not least, B, I just looked up on my trusty fuel prices. Okay, this goes to the general public. The cost of gasoline to operate your car is less than 20% of the cost of operating that car. So I always kind of snicker when gas prices go down, how people like to get off of our systems and get in their car, because 80% of the cost of the car is not the gasoline. And so the impact on lower gas prices to the overall savings of if you ditched your car and took us of about $10,000 a year is very, very minimal. So again, when you see lower fuel prices, if you're out there watching this webcast, understand that it is less than a quarter of the cost of operating your car, so it continues to cost you tens of thousands of dollars to drive more than it does to take our system.
Maybe that's something that our marketing department ought to look at with some of the ads that we're doing, because people do, think they're saving money and they're getting certainly off of Pace. I can't recall seeing Pace with low numbers of ridership like they've had for as long as they've had it. And my mic keeps going off on its own.
Just one more thought, Chairman McGallis. Lots of talk about gasoline taxes being increased. I mean, Iowa just took theirs up by a dime. The conservative governor of Nebraska, Mr. Ricketts, yes, of the Ricketts family of the Chicago Cubs name, took their their gasoline prices up in Nebraska big time. Conservative Utah just did it. But when you're looking at, as a policymaker, the potential of a gas tax increase, and the feds clearly, I believe, should increase the federal gas tax. Its buying power is 60% of what it used to be, adjusted for inflation. The cost of operating a car for gas is less than 20% of the overall cost of operating that car. So you just got to look and see and put things in perspective. And gas prices are continually, they went up a little bit last week, but they're historically low. But the cost of operating a car for fuel is, again, 20% of the cost of a car. 80% is coming from other things, from tires to maintenance to insurance.
Just to give a couple of specifics on that, 9 states across the U.S. have actually raised their gas tax, largely taking advantage of these lower gas prices because it really doesn't have a meaningful impact to the average driver. And 7 of those 9 states are very red states, and their governors and their legislature took advantage, I think, to some extent of the low gas prices and took that initiative to support their transportation infrastructure largely across their states.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we have a motion to approve. Motion by Director Ferrani, second by Director Lewis. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Nays? Ayes have it.
Five ayes and 2 absent.
Any other items to come before the committee? If not, motion to adjourn. Director Lewis, second by Director DeWitt. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Ayes have it. Committee adjourned. Thank you.